Microphone 9, testing, microphone 9.
Test microphone 10, mic 10.
Mic 11, testing, mic 11.
Testing podium mic, testing podium mic. Testing wireless mic, testing wireless mic. All yours.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. This is a meeting of the Nevada Unified School District Board of Education. It's June 13th, 2023. Please arise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, just a little announcement before we begin, a little bit change in our dynamics here at the board table. So Dr. Derby has completed her term of her contract. She's worked all of her days, so she will not be here over the remaining 2 board meetings that we have. So we have our interim superintendent, Dr. Larson, is here to help us out and sit at the table and be the staff representative. So thank you for doing that and handling anything that's going on in the district for the next couple of weeks. She will be the lead person on that, along with Dr. Tracy Smith, who still is working in her own district, but is giving her time here in NUSD until her official contract on July 1. So I just wanted to thank Dr. Derby for her commitment to NUSD for the last 2 years and really coming in and stepping in where we really needed her. We needed that history. We needed her experience more so than ever to get us back on track, and we're getting there, and we're ready to continue to move this district forward. So I just wanted to say that before we began, and the board did meet in closed session this evening, so I will have Superintendent Jacobson read out those announcements.
I've gotten a raise to superintendent.
Oh,
I've been promoted, not a raise.
Trustee Jacobson.
Fantastic.
Wow.
The board met on 4 items this evening in closed session. 1, with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session, public employees discipline, dismissal, release. This was information only. 2nd item, with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators. Francesca Whitcomb, Director of Human Resources, Employee Organization, California State Employee Association. That was information only as well. Item 3, with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators. Francesca Whitcomb, Director of Human Resources, Employee Organization, Novato Federation of Teachers. This was also information only. And our 4th item, with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session, pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators. Francesca Whitcomb, Director of Human Resources, Employee Organization, Management Unrepresented, was also information only. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Approval of our agenda this evening. The order of the business stands as is. Okay.
I'll move the order of business, item 7.
First by Trustee Millerek, second by Trustee Mack. All those in favor? 7-0. All right, consent agenda. We did have a couple additions. You have them at your table to item 15J and item 15K. Not anything major, but they are there. And does anybody want to pull anything from the consent? Nope. Okay. So seeing none, we need an approval of the consent with those couple of documents, amendments. Anybody? Trustee Lametta is a first. Approval of consent. Second by Trustee Mack. All those in favor? 7-0. All right, announcements from the board. Millerick?
I had the privilege of attending the Marin Oaks graduation and olive promotion, and as always, there's some tear-jerking. There's some opportunities that students in this town get because they go to our campuses that change lives, and we got to witness some of that at the Marin Oaks event.
Thank you. Trustee Pickus?
Similarly, I attended the Lou Sutton graduation, and it was beautiful. I didn't know very many of those students, but it's just really beautiful to see the families and the kids are so excited and so happy. It was lovely. Thanks.
Trustee Lametta?
No updates.
Trustee Gasson.
Similarly, if I can say that, I attended several graduations and promotions, and it's great. I think it's one of the best things we get to do is see these kids, how much they've accomplished and all the things that they've done, and heading off to the summer.
Trustee Matt.
Similarly, try to say that word again. Attended Loma Verde's promotion, my local neighborhood. Good to see all of my neighbors. But also attended Linwood's dual immersion. Really impressed by the way they put it together. It's very organized. And also, that was our first group of dual immersion students. Pretty exciting stuff. As well, a lot of recollection of a full year of COVID for these guys and how rough it was. Same with Loma Verde. Then I also attended San Jose Middle School's promotion, and that was always Debbie was there as well. It's always fun. And then Novato High, which I always love because I get to greet half the class and have a great time watching these kids get really excited about moving off into the world. So it's pretty cool. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And a good job by Ray Merrill stepping in to make it all happen.
Yeah.
I got to participate in many promotions and greatly enjoyed that. It's such a treat that we get to do that.
And I as well, and thank you for the board for reaching out to, I think we hit everybody, at least for secondary, we were able to have a trustee or two at every one of them. So thank you for doing all of that. And Dr. Larson.
All right, yeah, promotions and graduations was great. I didn't get to go to as many as I normally do, but enjoyed San Marin's on a very different level. Summer programs begin next week. One of the things I wanted to just share, we're very excited. One of the programs we offer is any seniors who need 10 or less credits to graduate. This year from our comprehensive high schools, we have 0, which means every single one of our seniors graduated on time this year, which is the first time since I've been here. So very excited, and congratulations to our high schools for that. And then another exciting moment. For the first time in, we believe, at least a decade, our special education department is fully staffed with school psychologists, occupational therapists, education specialists, which are our special day teachers and our resource teachers. We currently have 2 speech and language positions, and that is it in our whole special education department. And we have multiple candidates ready for that, and they're going to be interviewed next week. So I'm hoping that we are 2 weeks away from the first time we've ever been fully staffed and before the school year starts. So congratulations, and I want to special thank you to Jess Joseph and Marcia Carey. They have been scheduling interviews around the clock, and all their hard work is paying off. So that's it.
That's wonderful to hear. All right, presentations this evening. We have the one, which is the local control indicators. And Jen Larson's going to be, she has a few items on the agenda.
All right, thank you. I'm going to be up and down quite a bit tonight. So this is not a new presentation. Annually, I have the honor of coming before the board and not only presenting our LCAP, but prior to that, reminding you about our California dashboard and our California local indicators. So let me get this going. There we go. Part of our requirements as we move into the approval of the LCAP process, which will happen over the course of the next 2 meetings, is that we go through and are reminded of all of the local indicators. There are 9 indicators that are used for the dashboard to determine where each of our schools and our district falls. Some of those indicators are marked and measured by academic and very easy to see metrics. For example, our CAST scores, Smarter Balance, our graduation rates, our chronic absenteeism rates, things that are very numerical and easy to track. Some are not so easy, and those are our local indicators. Part of the reason it's so important for us to review these prior to the LCAP every year is because you will see that each of these local indicators is tied to our LCAP goals. So as we're moving through the LCAP process over the next few weeks and you're reading that very dense document, when you see these local indicators, this is what they're paired to. So the ones that we're worried about are the ones we're focusing on, are the ones that are not measured by academic or something that is measured by an ARIES reporting. The first one is basic, that teachers are appropriately assigned, that they are credentialed, we have sufficient access to standards-aligned curriculum. Local indicator number 2 is the implementation of standards. Are we providing content that is actually aligned to our standards? So when we look at our essential standards, our proficiency scales, the content or the resources we're using, are they aligned with our ELD, our ELA, math, so on and so forth standards? Family and parent involvement. Are we ensuring that we have stakeholder involvement opportunities like our school site leadership teams, our PTAs, our ELACs, to ensure that students, families are able to provide feedback and be involved in the school community? Then we skip over to number 4 is a student achievement that is measured by our EL progress, English learner progress. Number 5 is measured by chronic absenteeism and grad rates. And then that skips over to number 6, which is another local indicator of school climate. This is where we look at suspension and expulsion rates. We also spend time looking here at any local measures of surveys of the public. That's where our Youth Truth Survey comes into play, and we use that as part of our school climate indicator. Number 7 is access to a broad course of study. Do our students from their 9th grade on in high school have access to A through C courses? Do they have access to standards-based curriculum all the way through, regardless of their grade level and which classes they are selected to be in? And then number 8, is it number 9? No, it's not. Number 8 is pupil outcomes. And this is, again, how are our students doing? Are they actually completing their courses? We look at things like grades, we look at graduation rates again, and we look at progress, our retention rates, our acceleration rates, to ensure that our students are actually achieving in the subjects that we are providing. So again, this is just a review of what I've already said. Local indicators help us align our goals and our data to our needs, and help us establish what all of our LCAP goals are written to meet. So you can see that it starts with data, always looking at data before we make any decisions, then ensuring that all of the information from our data is informing our plan, making sure that the goals in the plan are identified for specific areas of student achievement, and that there's metrics to ensure that we are monitoring from year to year and making changes as needed. With that, you can see how these are going to match up in your LCAP goals, and you'll see them as you go through the LCAP as you were reading through them. So for example, priority 1, you're going to find in our goal 6. Priority 2, you're going to find in our goal 3. Priority 3, you will find in our goal 1, so on and so forth. So just making that connection between our local indicators and how they match up with our LCAP goals. Any questions?
All right, seeing none, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. We look forward to our own data for NUSD later on next school year. So, all right, this evening we have 2 public hearings. The first one is the 23-24 preliminary NUSD general fund budget. This happens every year at this particular meeting. We do the public hearing and the staff report at this meeting, and then the meeting on the 27th will actually do approval of our budget for next year, and along with the LCAP as well. So for right now, this is the public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing for the NUSD general fund budget. If you'd like to come and speak regarding the budget, please come up to the mic right here. Seeing nobody jump up to speak, I will going to close the public hearing. And just for trustees, when we get to the staff report, you can ask questions during that time. All right, moving on to the 23-24 NUSD Local Control and Accountability Plan, otherwise known as the LCAP. Again, this is our second public hearing for this evening. I'm going to open the public hearing for this item. And if you'd like to speak for this item, please come forward to the mic. Seeing nobody come forward, I'm going to close that public hearing. Okay. Now moving on to non-agenda public comment. Looks like we do have some community members that like to speak. Okay. Just before I call you up for non-agenda public comment and comment on any item on the agenda, you have 3 minutes to speak before the board. I will call your name, the 2 names that I have here, and you would just come up to the mic, and the timer is right over there. Please stay within the 3 minutes. If you don't, I will ask you to please wrap up if you tend to go over. So, and please, you're speaking to the board at the time when you come up. So I have Michelle Greer, I believe it is, and Carmen, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce, Frank, thank you. Fromke. So those are our 2 speakers for this evening. So welcome.
Good evening. Hi again. Nice to see all of you. Again, Michelle Greer, Novato resident, parent of 4 at Novato Charter School. Also, my husband and I both work full-time, contribute a good portion of our income to tax dollars, and are both active and supportive contributors to the community. Again, I just want to say thank you, too, for all of the work that you're doing for our schools and for our community. I'm glad that you're getting to see that in all these graduations, all the beauty that you're helping to create. I know that as a public servant, it often goes can be thankless, so just want to make sure and say thank you for that. I'm here tonight to speak on the matter from the last meeting that we weren't speaking on, which is regarding Measure G bond funding. I remember when Measure G came across our ballots for a vote and seeing Novato Charter School listed and voting yes to provide maintenance and improve our campus. I, like others, though, now are a bit dismayed by the approval of only $1.32 million in bond money for NCS. This $1.32 million is a drop in the bucket from the overall $222 million bond that we approved, and only covers a few of the projects that we've identified. As I look at the list, I'm trying to learn here quickly. I definitely know there's a lot of complexities that I don't fully understand, but when I look at the list of the projects that were approved for the other schools, and I look at the other elementary school projects and the spending, I see Novato Charter's at the very bottom of the list at a total of 2.8 after the 3 tiers, behind $10 million for Hamilton, 7.7 for Loma Verde, 7.4 for Lou Sutton, 12 for Linwood, and it goes on and on. For projects like new stage and kitchen, security IT infrastructure, modernizing IT library innovation centering, new stage and kitchen, IT infrastructure at Linwood, kitchen upgrade, high impact learning, it goes on. And yet only a few of our items were approved and many other were structures for our kindergartners. So I'm just a little confused, and I have questions about how the money should be spent and how the decisions about how that money was spent was made. I'm just wondering why our allocation is so much less than the remaining NUSD schools. I think if we kind of did some rough calculations, and it would be upward of $7 million if you were doing it based on per student basis. So I have a couple of asks. Please don't use the aging portables against us. I know that you are saying there's a legal responsibility to provide accommodations, good accommodations to the students, but a shared campus isn't in our best interest, so I'm hoping that we can, as this decision comes up throughout the coming months, come up with other options perhaps that don't involve like the dissolution of our school, which is what would happen if you combined us with another campus. Our school doesn't have declining enrollment. We're actually having people who are beating down the doors to come in. So please fund what's working in the community and for our students, and don't divest that. My time is up. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. So I am also a parent at Novato Charter. I have 2 kids there. I've been there for 9 years. I'll be there a total of 12 when I'm finished. I have been on the committee for raising money for the school for the entire time that I've been there. We tirelessly work for an entire year to basically raise $100,000 for basic stuff like basketball hoops and rugs for the new classrooms from leaky roofs and that sort. We also have a fund, and we heavily pressure people to be involved, because I've always known since I've been there that we get a lot less funding than all the other schools. I've never really understood why, but definitely after looking at the Measure G, and I have to apologize, I don't know the history. I know it's really complicated, and why we don't get the same like per student as other schools. But I would love to have there be that as at least an agenda item where, there's a lot of kind of confusion in our school of, is there a different value to one student versus another student? We're all taxpayers. When we signed this Measure G, we assumed it went to all schools. I didn't realize it was going to be such a small amount to our school. We also we ask that our students pay into the funding every month. We work and work and work and work to get every little dollar that we can from our not very wealthy community so that we can have these little pieces that, quite frankly, I have 2 athletes. We play all over the schools. They're gorgeous. The schools are gorgeous. You guys are doing a fantastic job. I noticed today that Olive School's parking lot is completely removed in one day. They're getting a brand new parking lot. I park there 5 days a week, if not more. Doesn't look that dilapidated to me, but nonetheless, there's a lot of improvements going, and it's wonderful, and it's beautiful, and I enjoy it. But it would be nice to feel like we were getting some equal per student. So anyway, I just ask that maybe we can have a discussion where our community, the NCS community, can come and learn and talk and share and understand why we seem to have been left out on this. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for both of you to taking the time out to speak before the board. That concludes our non-agenda public comment. Moving on to our staff report. This is the 2023. This is what I mentioned earlier. The 2 staff reports are the one's the preliminary NUSD general fund budget for 2023-24. And you have a presentation in front of you, staff report for 13A, the presentation document. And this evening, we have Avina Guzman from Ryland School Business Consulting will be presenting this evening. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Again, I just want to introduce myself because this is my first time presenting before this board. My name is Vina Guzman. I work with Ryland Consulting, and I have had the pleasure of working with the district for a little over a year since the director had left. And so I've been working really closely with business office staff and on the budget ever since then. And also, I just want to take a second to recognize Lois for all her help in developing the budget, and also the business office staff and the HR staff. There's a lot that goes into developing a budget. I like to tell people it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of moving pieces, so it's truly a collaborative effort, a team effort, so I just want to acknowledge all the district staff that helped me. So today, this is the key things we're going to go over. I just like to touch base on where we're at in kind of our state budget cycle, and then go over all the different key budget assumptions, revenue and expenditures, education protection account, contributions, fund balances for all of our funds, and then discuss multi-year projections and the components of any fund balance. So those are all the items that we'll talk about. So this is an overall high level of our state budget cycle. We started in January when the governor comes out with his proposed budget. And then going into February and April, the legislature starts reviewing it, making comments, evaluating. The statutory COLA gets recalculated. And then we wait on our heels for the governor's May revise, which is what we base most of our budget assumptions on. And then afterwards, when the state approves our budget, we will see what actually gets into the enacted budget and make any appropriate changes at that time to the budget. And if there's material items, the district can bring back a 45-day revise to the board. And if it's not material, then the changes will be reflected at first interim. So revenue assumptions, we used the Department of Finance LCFF COLA, which was 8.22% for this budget year. Average daily attendance is estimated at 6,841, which does not include the county office ADA, that's passed through. And districts we now have 3 different ways of potentially being funded. It's the greater of your current year ADA, your prior year ADA, or a 3-year prior year average. So with the ADA history, the district is projecting to be funded on a prior 3-year average ADA of 6,924. In March 2023, taxpayers renewed the parcel tax, so it includes parcel tax revenue of about $3 million. The district's estimated unduplicated pupil percentage for supplemental funding is 37.97%. It's about 0.75% lower than the prior year. Lottery is estimated at $107 per ADA for unrestricted purposes and $67 for restricted purposes. Mandated cost block grant is $37.81 for K through 8 and $72.84 for 9 through 12. And that program is subject to COLA, so it gets annual increases. The TK add-on is currently in the budget year is $3,044 per TK ADA. And then we are still spending down our federal COVID sources. So the budget does include about $2.8 million in federal carryover. Those are the programs where you can only recognize revenue in the year that you're spending it. So that's why we still see the revenue coming up in our budget. And this is just a chart to just kind of show the different revenue sources. So you can see the majority of your funding comes from general purpose, which is LCFF. And then 4% comes from federal revenues, which is most of your title programs, federal special ed dollars, and some of the COVID sources. Other state revenues, about 11%. That's like your lottery, your expanded learning opportunities, your after-school programs, CTE, those types of programs. And then local revenues is the local grants that you receive, and donations is the majority of that.
Where's the parcel tax fit in there?
The parcel tax, good question,
local?
is local. Yes, sorry. It's included in the local. Other local
Okay,
revenue.
in the 3% local revenue. Thank you.
Correct,
That's
overall.
what I assumed, but just thank you.
Yes, no problem.
Since he's asked that question, can I follow?
Yeah, right ahead.
I noticed you had 3 million, and I was just going back on my report. That's a really low estimate, and I was trying to find it back in my report because I was looking for it earlier. I think it's closer to 4, or was it intentionally brought down?
I think we kept it at the same projection that we had in the 23 fiscal year. So if there's an increase, then we'll adjust it accordingly if it goes up. For expenditures, we have a STRS rate of 19.1%. There's no change from the prior year. STRS is at its statutory maximum right now, so we won't see any increases until there's legislative change to increase that cap. PERS rate is going up to 26.68%, and that's about a 1.31% increase over the prior year. And then we have all the expenditures that are included that correlate to any federal and state one-time revenues, and any ongoing expenditures that are also from state and federal funding sources. It includes the annual step and column advances, and all the actions identified in the LCAP. And just to note that salary and benefits comprise 88% of the unrestricted general fund and 80% of the combined. So overall expenditures, you're mostly spending your budget on people. Yes.
Clarification, when you said STRS is 19% and PERS is 26%, that means if I earn $100 a day, the district's contribution, in addition to what they pay me my $100, which I have some deductions from, they pay an additional $26 if I'm a PERS person to the retirement system. So I cost the district $126.68 if I get paid $100.
Correct.
Right, so I could apply that to the entire 88%, trying to figure out the difference between teachers and classified, but
Yes, it's included.
that addition applies to 88% of our budget.
It's included. The 88% is total
Is
salaries
included.
and benefits. Salaries and benefits.
Oh, okay, thank you for that clarification.
No
Thanks.
problem. So really quickly, what's not included? There's just 2 pieces that are currently not included. That's the transportation funding, if the district is going to get any. I know we've been talking about transportation funding for a while now. but we won't know what transportation funding is going to actually look like until this month. Actually, it should be coming out soon with the second principal apportionment, and that's when districts will finally know what we're actually going to get in some additional transportation funding. So until we know what that's really going to look like, we haven't been including that in the budget because we can't count on it. And the Proposition 28 arts and music education funding is projected out about $970,000 for the district. So again, until we get actual allocations and get further information and direction from CDE, that's not currently included in the budget, but once we have information, then we'll add it. So for expenditures, and this goes to your question, so this is a graphical representation, so you can see how all the expenditures are broken down. So you can see 43% goes to certificated, and this is combined, so this is total general fund. 43% goes towards certificated, 15% towards classified, and then 22% towards benefits. So that makes up that 80% of the total general fund. And then the other 20% goes towards supplies and services and other expenses.
Okay, so pardon me. To be clear, mine's black and white here, so that's why I'm spinning around in my chair. So
Okay.
the 43% which is blue up there, and the 15% which is red, and the green which is 22%. Those three pieces of the pie put together is the total benefit.
Correct.
And okay, because that's a big chunk of the pie.
Yep.
Thanks.
So education protection account, per Prop 30, these funds are required to be spent on instructional purposes, and we are required to present and have it be approved as part of the budget, how the district is spending this money. So this is just a little table to show that 100% of EPA funds is spent on certificated salaries and benefits. And contributions, most of our restricted programs are expected to be self-sustaining, with the exception of a few. Of course, we contribute to our special education program, so in the budget year, that's projected at about $14 million. And then restricted routine maintenance is projected at about $3.3 million. And we have to make sure that that is at a minimum 3% of the total general fund dollars. So we look at the total budget and multiply that by 3%, kind of similar to the Reserve for Economic Uncertainty. It's usually a fairly close amount. So that's currently what we're contributing in the coming budget. Go ahead.
Can you clarify what you mean by self-sufficient?
Just
Self-sustaining?
Just meaning if you have restricted programs where you have $1 million, then you're expected to only spend that $1 million and not have the general fund contribute to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then just a little, then that negative means there's money coming back to the unrestricted general fund, and it's mostly parcel, just kind of balancing of the parcel tax. So
Our special ed program, that number's gone up a couple million, is that correct?
yes.
From year to year?
Yes,
So I
yes.
think
It traditionally goes up every year, and more so, with the
Right.
raises that were recently
Right.
given, so.
Yeah, okay.
And this is an overall summary of the general fund. It's unrestricted and restricted, and then total combined. So you have your beginning fund balance of $11.3 million for unrestricted. We're looking at revenue about 88 million, expenditures 73 million, and then the sources and uses going out, that's mostly the contribution, and then some money going out to Fund 14. So the net decrease at the end of the year is projected at 2.1 million, with the ending fund balance of 9.2 million. And the restricted resources, normally those you would see in the beginning of the year, zero net increase, decrease, but because we're spending some carryover, and then we have some other revenues, it's slightly off balance. But those, again, it's all self-sustaining, so we don't really have to focus on the restricted too much. So really the main thing just to draw attention is that in the current year that the deficit spending is 2.1 million. And this is just a summary showing all other funds. And really, it's just, the importance is just to show you that we expect all of the other funds to have positive fund balances and positive cash. And the general fund is not contributing to any.
Can I, just for the building fund, normally we get a page that says Fund 17, Fund 21, that's kind of where I look at it, where I always look for the number, whatever the fund is. So maybe, like, the building fund is our bond, the two bonds, correct?
Yes.
Well, it's really down, there was Fund 21, which was, I think, our older bond, and now Fund 22 is this current bond, correct?
I believe so, and they, in the accounting structure, they roll up into one, so
Yeah.
you only see it in the
Okay.
one. But, yeah, if you need something more detailed, I can,
I'm fine with
this
this
out.
now, but maybe we can talk about that later. But the special reserve fund, that's Fund 17.
That is Fund
good?
17.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
To be clear, we've been talking operational budgets. How much do we pay teachers? How do we keep the lights on? Who pays for the water to irrigate the fields? But on this list, building fund is bond dollars.
Correct.
Which are, the way public schools operate is bond is completely construction and building support is separated from operating dollars.
Correct.
So is there any other line on this table that's in the bond side of in the construction side of the world versus the operational side?
No, no, except for in the overall budget packet, there's a more detailed report on that specific fund, and it breaks it down similar to the general fund by the major object codes. So you can see that it's mostly construction.
Okay, because we can't move bond money to pay for teacher salaries.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yep, absolutely. So for multi-year projections, for revenue, we follow the Department of Finance projected LCFF COLA. So we're looking at 3.94% in 24-25 and 3.29% in 25-26. And we included a conservative increase of enrollment of about 50 students per year as the school starts and we look at enrollment trends, and I'm sure it's already changed from budget development. You know, we will keep coming, we monitor it regularly and keep making those adjustments, and then it's first interim, you know, the enrollment projections might look a little bit different, but that's what we included for now in the multi-year projection. Unrestricted and restricted local revenue, we assume it's fairly constant. Again, with those different the grants that are supposed to be self-sustaining, we monitor to make sure that the expenditures, you know, stay within those dollar amounts. And if they increase, then we'll increase with them, and vice versa. If they decrease, then we look at where we need to reduce for those. And federal and state revenues are expected to decrease in 24-25 because we're removing the remaining of all these one-time funding, and then it will be flat, and then it's flat in the third year.
So 50 students, if we get $10,000 per student, which is something like we get, that's $500,000. So 50 new additional students is $500,000, $500,000 in this budget.
Approximately.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
here for guessing numbers for this group, that's just, you
Yes.
know. So you think why did we come up with 50 additional students? What was because I've seen us be flat, and we've also been using prior year numbers because we got protected because of some state law. And it's 50, it's the number of students who attend more than 97% of their classes, I think. If there's too much truancy, we have to pay back money.
Right. So yeah, this was enrollment only. So, and then our 88%, I believe we had about 94% in our LCFF calculator. Yes, everybody's still been climbing out of kind of like that, you know, COVID hole. So I don't know where the 50 students came
Is
from.
this-
I wasn't.
Could it also be because of the TK program, increasing the
Right. Yeah. So I think your enrollment has been actually slightly increasing, but the 3-year average ADA ended up coming into play because it was previously so much higher. So you're still kind of climbing out of that, which most districts kind of tend to be doing. Okay. For expenditures, we include step and column. It's estimated at about 1.5% for certificated and 2% for classified. That comes out to about $1.2 million each year. STRS is estimated to remain flat, like we already talked about. It's at a statutory cap. PERS is estimated to increase by 1.02% in 24-25 and by 0.6% in 25-26. So that equates to about $325,000 over the 2 years, not per year, over the 2 years. And we assume that all the positions funded with the expiring COVID sources, because they all expire in 2024. Right now, the multi-year budget assumes all of those positions are going to continue with other one-time funding sources. That doesn't mean that's going to remain the same. It's just without a board-approved plan. So you have a new SUP and CBO that will come back and have a plan for any of those positions after they've had time to evaluate them. So the multi-year projection currently, though, assumes everybody's continuing on. And it's approximately $2.6 million each year for those positions. And then we assumed an additional teacher. Again, we're just being conservative for the extra 50 kids. Obviously, it's not 50 kids in a classroom, but that's just what we had included in the multi-year projection. So this is a summary of what that multi-year projection looks like. In the board packet, you have the full unrestricted and restricted. This chart is just showing the unrestricted, just to focus on your ongoing operations. And really the line, I just highlighted the line to just really draw attention to. We just want to know that, like we already talked about, we're deficit spending $2.1 million in the 23-24 fiscal year. That deficit will go down a little bit to 1.1 in the second year, and then we come back to being positive in the third year. Unless we get more kids, then, again, it's what we know what we know now. And then the components of the general fund, the ending fund balance. As required, we have to present to you what goes into the fund balance. And so this is across the 3 fiscal years, so you can see how it's changing, with the deficit spending. So in 23-24, you see we start with, we have $115 million in expenditures. The general fund, Fund 1, will have an ending fund balance of $22.1 million. And then here's the Fund 17 that we talked about a little bit about earlier. There's $5.2 million in Fund 17. So that gives a total ending fund balance of $27 million at the end of 23-24. Non-spendable and revolving, that's only $104,000. Restricted programs have an ending fund balance of $12.9. The reserve for economic uncertainty, the 3%, is about $3.4, almost $3.5 million. And then there's nothing in committed and assigned until the board takes action to commit or assign any funds. And so that leaves us with $10.9 million, almost 11. That is, that's not designated. So total, it's about 12% is what your reserve is looking like for fiscal year 23-24, and then goes down to 9 and 7% in the 2 out years. And that is including the Fund 17.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
The committed funds. The board committed some funds, $8.2 million, back on June 28th of last year.
Okay.
Yeah, we approved a resolution. It committed the funds. We've learned now that those funds have been they're not there anymore. They were used for the raise that we gave to staff across the board. And I see it here in your multi-year projection. It says committed, and there's no dollars in there. So I believe the board has to take action.
Yes.
To show that those committed funds are now not going to be used. They're going to be used for something else.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think, is that on the next, that, from what I know, it's on the next agenda?
I believe so, and
Yeah.
I'll connect with
Yeah,
staff to
yeah,
make
I
sure.
believe it is. I just want to make sure the board is aware of that. We've kind of talked about it in circles a little bit. It was a little bit of a surprise to the board that those funds were depleted. We had designated certain things for them, but we understand, obviously, a raise is important to our staff, and so we get that. So I just want to make sure we all understand, we're all on the same page. Trustee Gasson?
Well, thank you for that. And actually my question continues with that. So with the 12%, so the 23, 24, the 12% for the reserve, you said it includes the 3% and economic uncertainties and Fund 17. So that's bringing the 5.3 million above as part of the,
It's included.
and where?
So the total ending fund balance for Fund 1 is the 27.4 million. I shouldn't say for Fund 1. The total for Fund 1 is 22 plus the 5 from Fund 17 is that total 27. And so of that, then it's broken down. So it's really that 5.2 is included in that 10.9 undesignated amount.
That's what I was gonna ask. So it's not really then unassigned and unappropriated, because haven't we said what we wanna do? So isn't 17 have some designations to it?
No, I don't
No?
think so. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so 5.2 is in the 10.9. And we have a requirement of having to not, we can't have a reserve that's, I mean, do we have to do more work, I guess, on this? Do we have to?
So the law is now that you can't have more than 10% unless you commit the fund. So in the current year fiscal year, you would be required to commit that at a minimum that additional 2%.
Right, okay. So that would be something we would do at the next meeting as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So will
I-
we be doing another resolution for those committed, that 2%?
I believe so.
Because-
But we can check.
So I want to go back to the committed funds we approved back in 2022. We should have, when we depleted those funds, we should have done a resolution prior to depleting those funds to say the board is now taking those, there's some rule around that, and we have not done that. I think it's something
I'll
we
have
need
to look at what was
into.
done last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. So that, I just want to make sure that we go through the process correctly in how we're using it, and that the board documents it properly. So now, moving now into this 2%, as you say, the additional, that we have to create another resolution to find a commitment for those funds. Okay.
Correct.
So I think there's 2 resolutions that we're looking at.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you've been, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've been annually recommitting with the resolution any funds you needed to.
This is the first, June of '22 was the first time, because of that reserve cap
Oh, okay.
came into play. So
That
this
makes
was the
sense.
first time that we said we're committing, correct?
That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Trustee Miller, and then trustee
I
Gass?
think your point is the board should have been leading in that process versus finding out about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
is what
and we'll fix that.
Yeah,
And we'll make
that
sure it
we're
doesn't
trying to
happen
fix it.
again.
Yeah,
I think that's what I heard you just say.
Yes.
The second point I'd like to make is this 3-year projection to me is the gold standard. I'd like to think about 5 years out, but 3 years is what the state requires. And we're going from 12% in the first column, which is reserves less the 3% that's not a reserve for us. 3% is if we're down to 3%, the county takes us over, so it's their 3%. Out of the 12%, we only have 9%.
Correct.
Out of the 7% in the last column, we only have 4%.
Correct.
So 4% is we're about $100 million a year business, so 4% of about $4 million number. So that means if we have a surprise bigger than $4 million, we got a problem. And historically, this district, maybe Alan Harris remembers it, well, we've loaned. That said, I mean, we are where we are, and I appreciate the clarity of the presentation. Thank you very much for that. And this is after passing the parcel tax. One can only imagine the circumstances we would have been in without the community standing next to us and supporting us. But we have some hard fiscal work to do, which is this board's and the superintendent's hard work in front of us. So I appreciate the clarity. Thank you very much. And I don't like what it feels like.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I didn't know you want to finish? You can finish.
I mean, if you have questions,
Well, I was going to add on to that, and it kind of goes back to my original statement about the parcel tax. So I went and found, at least for 2022, 23, and 23, 24, we're projecting 4 million. So there's $1 million there that I think, if indeed that was calculated on 3 million is the revenue from that. I can't go through these small numbers even with glasses that fast. So I'm thinking there's at least another $1 million potentially that's on there, so it'll make it a little bit better.
we can
And then
take
I
a
can
look.
wait.
We can take another look at it.
Okay. And I'll wait till you're done for my other questions.
That the parcel tax brings in $4 million. That's why we're just.
Oh, okay.
So to see 3 million was a surprise to me as well, and so I'm glad Trustee Gasson. So it'd be nice if you could double check that.
Yeah, I will double check and make sure staff lets you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm human. There could have been one number off. Who knows? But I'll double check and make sure you guys get that.
That's why we're here tonight before we adopt next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we're really towards the end, so then you can ask questions. So, I mean, even though we're deficit spending in the current budget year, and the one after the third year is still, in the positive, so we'd still self-certify as having a positive budget because you are able to still meet your financial obligations. So. And next steps is board adoption on June 27th. And then the state will adopt their budget. And based on that, if we need to make any revisions, if they're significant, then we would do a 45-day revise. And then if not, then it won't be till first interim. And then we start working on closing the 22-23 fiscal year and move on to the audit. So it's a never-ending cycle.
About the calendar, how does the state's delayed tax collections, pushing out deadlines to August and all that impact? I assume it doesn't affect the calendar per se, but it certainly affects the way politics is going to work and funding. Any feedback you can provide on that?
Not really off the top of my head. So you're not basic aid, so some of your local property taxes aren't as significant, but it does impact your parcel tax, right, and any collections that they're making there. But I don't know if it changes the projection. It's probably more cash flow. Other than that, I don't know. I don't want to venture too much.
Yeah, I'm guessing then the answer is that's really more of a, that those funds are going to be pushed into the following year. So.
Yeah, and we'll see. When we did, if you'll see in the narrative, we assumed at the May revise that those one-time dollars were going to be cut. So we reduced that in the 22-23 fiscal year because we don't want anybody to accidentally spend money that's not available, right? But now I haven't read the detail, but I know I've already seen the headlines that some of the feedback back from the legislature is to not to reduce those one-time dollars as much. So we still may have some additional one-time monies that we'll be able to put back into the budget.
So I guess that crossed my mind. A more direct question would be, could the state, they're supposed to do their adopted budget, and we're all going, and part of it is the whole COLA. Are they really going to do 8 point something? Or, if, October, it's really bad, they're locked into that promised COLA
the feedback that I've seen so far is the legislature is holding on the 8.22%.
Okay, but I mean, as of that date, they can't come back later. Like if October looks bad and says, oh no, we're going to redo it, it's locked in because of the July the final sign off?
I've not ever seen where they came back that late and reduced it any. I've seen very minor changes, and it has more to do with just actual calculations where somebody just rounded it, probably just like not so right, and it's changed slightly. But I've never seen anything drastic. Usually they hold to what they've approved at the state level.
It just feels like so much unusual circumstances though too. Mm-hmm. So I think that is, at least for me, making me hesitant. Like these looking good, but we still don't know until October, whatever.
Yeah, between the January budget and the May revise is usually when it's up in the air, could go anywhere with the COLA.
And then just things it's more, and thank you for your presentation, it was really helpful, and I don't really have questions per se, but just wanted to reiterate some things that you had already said that I flagged, and I just think it's good for everyone to know as we go into this, again, as I said, with the late tax returns and all the, some of the uncertainty that's been out there. A couple of things that you had already said was about the percentage of our budget that goes to salaries. And then I did a little math because I used to be in HR and a county manager, and it was like a 20% would be what you would calculate on top of a salary for benefits or whatever. And because of STRS and PERS, when I did that calculation, I know that they're different. It's 40% is what we have to allocate, and I think that's just something. It's an incredible amount. You've got an individual salary, but then on top of that, the benefits and everything amount to 40%. So when we're looking at our numbers and things, that's
And
why.
it also includes health and welfare when you're looking at the overall employer cost benefits too.
Right. But I don't know what it is in regular businesses now, but we used to calculate 20 to 22%. So it's just a significant difference. And then the other thing that I just caught, and it's in the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. I know this is something more that after the fact they might take away, but the fact that we would then have a payable due to the state if they've changed money, I think it's a different way of thinking that most people don't understand, that we've counted on that money and we might spend it, but if all of a sudden something changes, we're going to then owe the state for money that they gave us even though we've already had the expense.
Right.
So as somebody who was in accounting and business, it's like eye-opening to see, well, you have to pay that back, even though they said, well, you can plan on this, and then just for perspective of our financial situation going forward.
Trustee Miller and then Trustee Pickus.
My memory from a long time ago is the state didn't reduce the budget once it was adopted, but they deferred the actual physical payments into the first quarter of the following fiscal year. So the money we had to pay payroll, we didn't have. And I think we borrowed against construction dollars to make payroll, I think. But it's it's a long time ago, but it's not beyond what the state can do. So your confidence in the state government and state politicians is mine isn't as confident as yours is.
Right.
And maybe
I've
Mr.
been,
Harris will remember it better than I do.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe year 21 of education, so I've seen all kinds of crazy things. I've definitely seen some different crazy deferrals and some charts to try and follow and map it out. I don't know that there's been any talks of deferrals right now, so, but again, it ends up being cash, not that you can't count on the dollars, it's cash flow, right? And then their problem becomes our problem.
Trustee Pickus.
Yeah, thank you. We talked in May about a $15.8 million coming back in response to the construction that we've done. And that 15.8, we're talking about the extra kind of money that we're finding and what that looks like in that 7%. Is that 15.8 in our projected budget for the next couple of years, or is that an additional piece that we also have coming our way that is not yet accounted for?
That I'm not familiar with that, so I wasn't part of that conversation, so I'd have to inquire.
It wouldn't be in this
It's
budget.
state reimbursement for construction loans, so I don't even know if it's available for general fund, but clearly somebody who knows more than me needs to look at it. So I appreciate the comment.
So that just having that in the back of our minds as well is, I think, important.
Yeah. I think we might be. It's the state facilities funding. It might be what that
Right.
conversation was about.
Right. Oh, great. I have a comment card. Mr. Harris.
To provide a general comment and then a point of information about the parcel tax mechanics of how we get money. I think that this budget is very good. It's clear, and I certainly think the district has no problems in self-certifying as a positive certification under the terms of AB 1200. The rest of budget details clearly are going to shift in a year of uncertainty. With respect to the parcel tax, the last estimate that the Committee on Ways and Means for the parcel tax, was a fundraising committee, the steering committee, was that the tax would generate something less than $4 million, but fairly close to that, within a $100,000 to $200,000 range. Shelley Scott, I think, is the person who can tell us how many parcels are going to be billed the $251 in Novato. We have the last estimate that she provided, 4 or 5 months ago. I may even have that in my notes at home. The county operates taxes, real estate taxes, for schools under something called the teeter plan. The teeter plan is that the county will pay the school district whatever their parcel tax revenue is supposed to be. If somebody doesn't pay their tax, the county puts a lien on the property so that when it is sold, they collect the money. In the past, before the county of Marin adopted the teeter plan, the school district used to do that. And we would periodically, when I was on the school board, get these large, several $100,000 settlements once the parcel was sold. So we don't have to worry about the number of parcels that are going to be billed times the 251. That'll be real cash. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if that is no other questions, this will come back as a discussion action item on the 27th. We'll move forward. Thank you very much for your presentation and the work that you've done the last year with NUSD. Moving on to 13B, this is the 23-24 Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP.
Thank you for the presentation.
All right. Back again, this time with the 2023-24 LCAP plan. As years prior, this is our first read, so I'm going to go through any of the successes and challenges that were identified through our stakeholder groups, the process by which we've come to this plan, and then you have a copy of the current updates, and what I'll be reviewing with you publicly is any significant changes to the LCAP. I want to start by reminding everyone that this is the third year of a 3-year plan. So when we initiated this plan, there was one thing that the entire district stakeholders were committed to, and that was our 3 goals. Those were compiled after a great deal of community work in partnership with our P3 program, MCF, our Marin County Foundation, and a number of other stakeholder groups to combine the work and the goals that the elementary schools had with that of the secondary so that we could all be working in the same direction, that we really were working as a unified district. And so throughout these 3 years, we have remained very committed to those 3 goals. That's our culture of competence, our culture of caring, and our culture of excellence. In addition to that, we had the opportunity in this new LCAP formula to have a focus goal. And at the time, we identified data and high quality use of data as a really important need. We've continued that focus goal, and we will continue with it this year as well. As you'll see, there's been a great deal of work, a great deal of progress, but the community and the stakeholders, both staff and families, students, feel really good about the direction we're going, but feel that we need to make sure that it stays at the forefront, that we are always looking at data, and that we are always looking at ways to improve our data analysis in our decision making. So you're going to see a very consistent goal. What I will say is over the last 3 years, we've really refined these goals. And so what we've done, and I think the greatest differences were last year, is taking our LCAP and what we heard loud and clear from our stakeholders. We want to see these dollars going to direct services to students. We want these to be really visible, and we want students to feel these services day to day. And so we shifted most of our funding to serve the functions that students need on campus throughout the day. The other is to simplify by also taking away some of the multi-funding, and as you just heard in our budget, knowing that in the future we were going to have less one-time money, is to prioritize some of those pilots that we started during COVID with those funds that we know are having the greatest impact, and making sure that they have a very solidified space in our ongoing funding sources. And so those are the ones you'll see we continue to be committed today. Most notably would be a significant amount of money for our community liaisons, significant money for our student services specialists, or our student support specialists, and our data specialists. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start our overview. So, similar to every year, we have a number of stakeholder groups that are involved. I have the honor of speaking for months with different groups of people. Most notably is our Parent Advisory Committee and our Student Advisory Committee. These two groups work in tandem. Most often the meetings are held together, but there is always one very special meeting. For any of you who are able to be there, it is usually a highlight of the year when we have a student panel. We have representatives from kindergarten through 12th grade. We look at every one of our items in our LCAP and we ask our students, how is this going? What does this look like for you? When we say, do you feel safe on campus? Give us a little bit of your experience. And really more than anything, I think that conversation for all of our stakeholder groups, that input is so pivotal in ensuring that either we are on the right track or there's something that we need to make a shift. If we hear a student say, I'm not sure what that means, clearly it's not reaching students. And so really that student advisory group has become a cornerstone of all of our stakeholder engagement. Then we have our district leadership team. We have our DLAC committee. Many of our principals talk with their site leadership teams around the goals and how they're impacting their specific school sites. And then our Marin County SELPA. And while special education is not one of the groups that is specifically defined in our LCAP, although it is looking like it will become in our next round, which is wonderful, we do want to make sure that all of the services we provide in our LCAP are accessible, and that we have that stakeholder group's input in what are you seeing and what are you experiencing on campus. Again, this is a stakeholder engagement group. It's to give us input, it's to give us evaluation of the outcomes that we're seeing in our community from that lens. It's not a decision-making group, but we do take that input very seriously, and each year we do make adaptations based on those priorities. All right. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We've gone over this slide for many, many years. It's a 3-year plan. Really, this is our opportunity to tell our story. This is our opportunity to say, this is who Novato is. This is what each individual school needs. And this is how we're going to serve the students of Novato. So as you can see, and maybe you haven't seen this yet, one of the very first changes, and there will be changes from when we put this together to even today, and then again when you see it again for final approval. When we started this process, what we were working with was $5.5 million. Currently, the new allocation is about $5.9 million, and we will have a final number to come back with as approval. Right now, we're planning to work off of the 5.9 that you see in your current slide deck. Really important as we're going through this process, not just with community members, but as a board and as a staff, who does this money need to impact? Does it impact, do the good strategies impact all students? Of course. But what this money is intended for is to ensure that our 1,250 English language learners, our 2,373 students who are receiving or eligible for free and reduced lunches, and our 32 foster students have the extra support they need, the expanded and extended services they need to be served and successful in our schools. As a review, these are our goals. I'm not going to read over them. They have not changed. Although at the end, when I tell you what are our most significant updates, the changes you will see are the addition of the areas where we've been identified for differentiated assistance in both Broad Goal 1 and Broad Goal 3. Broad Goal 1, our culture of caring. The original goal will remain the same, but we will be adding on a very focused, specific view into our chronic absenteeism. While it is not listed, one of the other areas that we as a stakeholder group will also be looking at is our suspension rates. Broad Goal 3 is where we're going to be looking at our academic achievement, both in math and English language arts. And for both of those specified needs, it will be for our English language learners, our students, and I've got to make sure that I'm reading these right, and you'll see these in our last page, our EL students, our students with disabilities, and our homeless students. All right, our focus goal, I mentioned focus goal number 1, that was around high quality data. As a very new twist to the LCAP process, the state needed a place for us to report on our expanded learning opportunities money. Rather than do a secondary report, they asked that we add it to our LCAP, so this will remain though. We do have until 2024 to spend this money, but nothing about this goal has changed. This is simply a requirement that it is allocated and it is noted in the LCAP. It is not a part of the $5.9 million. This is extra funds that needs to be reported on, and this is the way they've asked us to do so. There is a 6th goal, that is our maintenance of effort goal. It is not listed anywhere except for in the primary document. That is all the other things that you just heard mentioned. Salaries, keeping the lights on, making sure our fields are watered. They do have to be mentioned in our LCAP, but they are, again, not specific to the $5.9 million of our LCFF supplemental funds, which is why it is not a focus in our presentation. Yeah.
Sorry, because I had noticed, and I'm wondering now if this is why. So I had noticed, I went through the whole thing and then noticed it looked like, no, I can't find my note. There was a shortfall in a summary thing of about $500,000. There was like a table at the end and it looked like there was shortfall. So is that maybe why?
It could be in the maintenance of effort. It would be identified within a goal. If you could tell me which page it was on.
I'll look for it then. I just, as you were talking about that, as I was reading it, it looked like there was a $500,000 difference from the money we were getting, and it also you've been helpful in articulating that the number changes too. So I think it's maybe a culmination of things.
Now the number. So what we're reporting on right now, there's 2 things. The first is the review of last year, and what you're seeing is that we've spent what we were allocated. The next piece is what we anticipate our spending to be for next year. So if you could tell me where you saw that, and while we have Vina here too, she might be able to help out since she's been the budget side of this document. All right. Okay, so we're going to do a quick review and reflection. So Broad Goal 1, our culture of caring. This is really around making sure our students feel safe, that they have the support that they need, and then they come to school, they know that it is their place. It is designed to serve them. You're going to see a lot of the word continued. Again, what we found in our stakeholder from all aspects was the goals and the action items that we have come to refine are having a great deal of impact. And so you're going to see a lot of, for example, continuing our mental health services. We increased significantly our mental health counselors on our campuses. We have at least 1 on each campus. They are designated to a campus so they can be a part of the school community. That has been the difference in students' responses to what that feels like and how they get help is so vastly different than 3 years ago. I think we're all really proud of that. So the continued mental health services. Similarly, we have continued with our DESA, which gives us a social emotional screener. This has really informed the work that our data specialists are doing. This is how they're determining small groups to give social emotional intervention, to put together social groups, to work with students on targeted skills for how to engage in a healthy and safe way in the classroom. And then we just continue to see an increase in our community liaisons. We went from not being able to really gauge how often and to what extent our community liaisons were connecting with families. We went to about 100 contacts with students and families a month to about 120, and now it looks like we're closer to 150. So the impact our community liaisons are having is tremendous. Having our community liaisons on campus full-time just changes everything about the communication in our schools. So again, to continue that. Challenges continues to be attendance. We see this both in our attendance rate, which impacts our ADA. Ever since COVID, we've kind of hovered right around 94%. Before COVID, we always were right around 96, 97%. We will continue as a real close look on our attendance. On the flip side of that is our chronic absenteeism. So if you look at in 2021, we had 7.4% as compared to this last year of 16.4% of our students chronically absent. This speaks directly to where we have been identified for differentiated assistance. Again, and a large percentage of those students, of that 16.4%, where we know we need to offer more support, is in our English language learners, our homeless students, and our students with disabilities. Just another way of looking at this is the number of referrals we've had to SARB. Again, it has increased. This not as significantly, 25 to 29. When I look at 7% going to 16% in chronic absenteeism, I also am looking at SARBs that we need to probably be referring a higher number to SARB so that we can get that community support for students. I think sometimes SARB has a negative connotation, but really it's a support team around a student, starting with the school. And so how are we going to use the systems we have in place to make sure students and families have what they need? Yeah, questions on broad goal 1?
It's just more of a comment, and I actually had it for the EL reclassification. What I would like, and I don't know if it's a reflection of what's required or how you present it within the LCAP, but using the chronically absent, the percentage is helpful because those numbers change, how many students we have. And I would say the same for, the 25 referrals and 29. Is it, was it because we have more students that there's more? I find it helpful to also have a percentage. I don't know if it matters, but it provides some context, because if we have more students, 29, it's still not great to go up, but if the percentage isn't really changing, then that's kind of key. And again, I had it as a note for the EL reclassifications, because it's great that we're reclassifying more, but I know there was that one slide that says how many kids, but it's at a moment in time, and I was interested to know, do we have more ELs? Are there more students coming in that are being need of reclassification, or what's the percentage that we're actually achieving and getting those kids reclassified?
Yeah, I think that's a great note. Part of the challenge with this is third year, we can't change the metric midstream. So I'm going to make a note of that. I can certainly share it publicly, but for our next LCAP cycle, that percentages is a better way of looking at things, because individual numbers doesn't take into account the population that we're starting with. So I think that's just a great note for long term for us in the future. All right, culture of competence. This is ensuring all of our students have what they need in terms of academic support. So these are our tier 1 supports, moving through the tiers of tier 2 and tier 3. First and foremost, we all had the opportunity to work with Anthony Muhammad and Nancy Dome on our equity, which was really focused on closing our achievement gap. I think there was a lot of discussion around what are the outcomes that are anticipated from those partnerships. And I think both of them have been very clear, and I know the work that we've had the opportunity to do with them has been very specific to academic outcomes for students. There should not be predictable outcomes for certain groups of students based on their demographics. And so having that partnership and having a coach to work through that with our staffs, I think, has been a huge success. The second, we expanded our data specialists. This is a great example of one of those pilots. We tried it at a few schools with some grant funds and some one-time funding. We saw tremendous improvements in outcomes for students, and so we expanded it using LCFF funds last year to all 13 schools. We just continue to see it grow. I can't say anything but positive about both their interactions with students, the training they're providing for staff, and how it is impacting the day-to-day success rates of our students. Similar to our community liaisons, just having that body on campus that knows the students, knows the staff, knows the community, and always has an eye on progress is amazing. EL specialists, again, ensuring that we have somebody who's doing the same work, but just for our EL students. I think we are refining that process, but where we're seeing the greatest growth is in our reclassification. We had, for those of you who were at our reclassification event, it was tremendous to see that many students reclassifying. Kudos to, Sinaloa had rows and rows and rows. It was just amazing. So we're starting to see all of those aspects pay off on student success. Challenges, we do still need professional development in supporting English language learners in the classroom around differentiation. So day-to-day supports for not just during their EL class, not just that very explicit English production, but how are we supporting our English language learners in all of the rest of their day? And so we will continue to look for professional development in those areas and give teachers opportunities to observe and practice. And then again, explicit interventions that are in the school day. We cannot expect for our students interventions to happen outside of what we have control over, so we need to make sure we have protected time. And then again, we are continuing to do our best to plan forward and not get to a place where we have ELD classes that are larger than 15. We did better this year. They're still creeping up in a couple of different schools, and so again, we will back off the starting numbers to make sure that none of our ELD classes should ever go above 15. That is continued goal. We haven't hit it right on yet. Any goal 2 questions?
How many kids district-wide are we serving?
In English language?
Yeah.
ELD students? About 1,200.
Okay,
Almost
so that
13.
number from the start is still pretty
That's the same,
consistent?
yeah.
Okay.
It stays about the same. It fluctuates 1 or 2 from here and there. We will have a whole nother number once we finish all the reclassifications of this year. Yeah, and summer enrollment.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Comment. The designated time in the classroom for the ELD, that tends to be, when are we going to achieve that?
When are we going to achieve that? That's a great question. I think the
That's
elementary schools have done a really great job of consistently including universal access, and that is one opportunity. Again, continuing with our office hours, that's another opportunity. But from 6th grade through 12th grade, it really is protected. We do have a period in the day.
Yeah.
It's really making sure that we have, that in our elementary schools, that we have that time for students to get what they need. And I think it's an ongoing challenge. We only have so many hours of the day.
Yeah.
One of the things we have is we have students who need multiple interventions. And so how do we prioritize what they get on any given day? And so I think it's just constantly a work in progress.
Okay. Yep.
Oh, sorry, just for clarification, Dr. Larson, the 1,200 students, that does not include the reclassification that just happened a couple of weeks ago, right?
That number would include because they will stay on our enrollment until the end of the school year. So as we are turning over, so this is another one. When we get into some of, especially these culture of excellent goals, there's some gaps in your data because we need the year to end. So we don't have DNF lists complete yet. We don't have, obviously, CAS scores won't come until over the summer. Our reclassified students won't update until we roll over. So they are still currently in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other? Okay. Goal 3, culture of excellence. So this is always really focused around our shift towards standards-based grading, as we call it, proficiency-based education. Successes is that we continue to grow and expand and refine based on our local and state indicators. The teacher leadership team has always been a highlight. I will say in this last year, we had our teacher leadership team leading a lot of new areas, which meant we saw a little bit of a slowdown on PBE, but we also really gained some great leadership from them in our equity, PBIS, and wellness areas. Next year, we will return to having TLT focus primarily on PBE with some supporting PBIS. The main reason is, and you'll see this when we get to our challenges, we are at the year when we are all in. And so starting in August, we need to see consistency from room to room and from school to school. And we're not going to do that unless we have consistent leadership on each school campus. So allowing our teacher leaderships to go back to what they do best, to focus on PBE, paired with, we are getting ready to pilot a grade book that will allow teachers access to something that aligns to our new way of grading. I think is going to be make it improve leaps and bounds over the course of the next year. So really getting back to that focused work. All the pieces are in place. Everyone's ready to go. What we're hearing a lot from staff is if we're going to do this, we need to go all in, right? We need to have consistency. And if there's anything I hear from families, it is we're starting to get it, but we still have 3 of my teachers are using traditional, 3 of my teachers are using PBE, and it's just hard to manage. So this is the time. We'll be getting to that. Again, we did have overall district-wide gains in ELA and math. We still have growth. There's still room to go. We aren't back where we were before the pandemic, but we are certainly growing and going in the right direction. And then another success is we added 2 CTE pathways. As you know, our CTE program has been growing quite a bit over the last 5 to 10 years. This year we added technical theater and engineering. STEM seemed like it should have always been CTE. Now we have all of the pieces in place for it to be that. So our students will now not only be getting, yes, I am a STEM graduate, but I'm also having a CTE certificate and completion in the engineering pathway. Did I miss anything? Oh, again, a challenge. This is going to be similar when you said, how can we not do this? We continue to try and get our counselor ratios down to our desired 1 to 350. We always kind of end up at about 1 to 365. So continuing to work on that. Yeah.
I just want to point out, because I had to go back and make sure I read this right. It said the state of California requires 1 to 622.
You read
That's
that correct.
insane.
You read that correct. I think 1 to 350 is insane. When you think about everything we expect from our school counselors and the support that we really need them to provide, 350 is a very big caseload. So yes, I can't imagine a world where it is 600 plus. Yeah. Okay. Focus goal 1, high quality data. We talked a little bit about these, so I'll go through them pretty quickly. Successes, our data specialists are there. They're in all 13 schools. It's amazing. NUSD's data management system, Data Matters, which was paid for initially, the creation of this through our LCFF, it is well in place and used district-wide. Increased usage every year. I love when I'm in a meeting and a teacher pulls out a report from Data Matters. It just makes my heart flutter. Data cycles are continuing to be implemented. Every school got into a data cycle at least 1 point through the year. We're really aiming for 6 to 8 week cycles. Again, this really relies heavily on a designated space within the day for us to provide the intervention that we want to be doing in those data cycles. So we will continue to refine our practices around intervention. And then our counselors, a big part of what they do, but now they have a team. So it's our counselors, our data specialists, our administrators, and our instructional leadership teams monitoring our D&F lists. We will see that data get input between now and our next meeting as the school year wraps up. And then our challenges comes down to that designated time, not just for intervention, but also for staff to do this work. As you guys know, we have less minimum days and less professional development time coming in the future. So finding the time for teachers to be together and have protected opportunities to work as professionals and colleagues to look at this and make good decisions for their students is really critical. All right. Any questions on the goals? We're so close. All right, what are our big changes? There's very, very few. As I noted in goal number 1, and you will see it in the LCAP itself, we have added a second sentence to goal number 1, which is to ensure that there is a lens and a focus on academic achievement. Goal 1 is On chronic absenteeism for our English language learners, our students with disabilities, and our homeless students. And then in goal 3, you will see the addition of attention specific to the academic growth in math and English language arts for our EL students, our students with disabilities, and our homeless students. Other than that, the bulk of our LCAP is to continue. Numbers change because of staffing increases and increases in salaries, not just within our own organization, but the organizations that we contract with. But other than that, there are very few changes this year. And with that, I open up to any last minute questions. It's a lot.
Trustee Gasson?
I found the page that I was referring to.
Great. What page are we on?
It is 101. It's the header, the contributions and stuff, and I'm just thinking, because I might be reading it out of context, you have the concentration dollar amounts, total expenditures, estimated expenditures, and then the difference is a negative 488,000.
Mm-hmm.
I just was wondering, because when you were mentioning things that were not accounted for and stuff, I was thinking maybe the other numbers and stuff were in here. That's okay.
These are the kinds of
mind.
questions. And so, Vina, I'm going to put a question mark for you and I to go back and look at this one. So we're talking about goal 1, contributing actions and annual update, the discrepancy between our planned contributing expenditures and our estimated expenditures for contributing actions. I'll make a note and we can go back and look.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get that by next time.
And I just want to add in my own experience with the community liaisons. This year has been incredible. I'm so glad. I can't even imagine not having had them there. I think it's just been a huge benefit for our kids and families and each of the sites. So thank you for that.
I could not agree more.
All right, staff report. Trustee Lamena?
Dr. Larson, so I like your update for the homelessness population. What is your vision? I see that there's 115 homeless students at NUSD according to your data. What vision do you have in terms of supporting this population?
So this is one of the populations that our community liaisons work most closely with. And so there's a few things. The first is a lot of what we need to do is looking for trends in absenteeism specifically. Absenteeism typically is the #1 indicator of academic achievement. So there's going to be an overlap between both goal 1 and goal 3. So you'll notice it's the same groups of students. The way you are identified for differentiated assistance is that you have a group of students who is identified for more than one indicator as a challenge. And so those 3 students were identified because they are identified both for chronic absenteeism and academic achievement in math and English. So what we'll look for is trends in those 2 things. There will be increased reaching out, increased connection between community liaisons and the school counselors. If it's an elementary school, it will also be the student support specialist. But really it's around that identification and individualization of services to understand what's happening there. It's a lot of root cause analysis is where we are right now. Yeah. With 100 students, imagine over 13 schools. It could be 1 student at a school, it could be 15. But really what it's saying to us is this is a group of students who needs a really individualized plan. It's going to be very different for each one.
No further questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Staff report, and it'll come back again on the 27th. Continuing on, moving into our discussion action. This is item 14A, approval of Arts Attack Elementary, the K-5 Visual Art Program. Karen Fremantle will be presenting. Hi.
Good evening, trustees and Dr. Larson. I'm happy to be here. I generally show up and spend the money that we have worked so hard for our students. But tonight I am coming to you for approval it's really a funding shift for our Arts Attack comprehensive art curriculum for our K-5 classrooms. This is not a new program to our K-5 schools. It has just been funded prior to this coming year, through school fuel. So with the money that we received using the arts, music, and instructional materials funds, we are taking on that expense. It's a 5-year contract that we get. You'll see on the quote that you have. And we're shifting that from school fuel to this grant money. That way that the funds from school fuel can be opened up to other possibilities. So that's just a shift in that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Trustee Pickus?
Yeah, is it the 26,000 for the 5 years? It's not an annual fee?
No. No.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Action item, would anybody like to approve this if there's no concerns or questions? Trustee Gasson is a first. Second. Trustee Pickus is a second. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 14B, approval of the Magnolia Project internship program at Marin Oaks High School. You do have the actual agreement in purple at your table.
All right, good evening, trustees. Good evening, Dr. Larson. We are excited to bring forward to you tonight the Magnolia Project, which is a pilot internship program for all 12th grade students at Marin Oaks High School. This program will provide 2 sessions, one in the fall of 2023 and one in the spring of 2024. It is a 2-week full-time, 60 to 79 hours pilot internship program. Students will select from a database on what they want to explore, and then they will work with a mentor in that field during the internship. Students during that time will build a resume and present what they did at the end of the 2-week session. The superintendent and staff recommend the approval of that contract for the implementation of the Magnolia Project as a pilot at Marin Oaks for the 23-24 school year. I did invite Gia Biaggi, who is in the audience out here, just in case you had any questions that I was not able to answer.
All right, board members, Trustee Millerick.
This is exciting. So I'm looking at the page and it says service providers. I assume this is either the name of the company or the category that they fit in. Is that, help me read, this is.
What are you on, Ross?
Mike Suisi, Director of Student Services, second page, Magnolia Project. It was a part of it's on white paper, not colored paper. Am I in the right page? Yeah. So it says ready to go pre-internship curriculum.
If I can provide some context.
Perfect.
So we have planned with Kessa Early and Krista Peach at Marin Oaks. We have 10 little pre-internship modules. It's encompassed in our curriculum called Ready to Go. So the students will be doing a pre-internship boot camp week at Marin Oaks, where basically they're gonna drink from a fire hose. They're gonna build a resume, cover letter. By the end of the week, they'll do an interview with the mentor in the community. It's like speed dating. They'll match right there, and then they'll have their 2-week off-campus experience after that week. So they get all the prep. And then during the 2-week experience, they do a couple of things to set them up for their presentation of learning. They take videos, they take photos, they do reflections, they interview their mentor, they build out like a meaningful next phase plan. So all of that is built during the internship, so then the kids put it together at the end for their presentation of learning.
So that's wonderful. And maybe we don't want to say publicly, which companies, who arranges for the actual 2-week event? Is that?
We do. So it's part of the whole package. So
who's we?
Magnolia Project does.
Oh, okay. So Magnolia Project is a vendor to NUSD. Is that?
Yeah, we're a Sonoma County-based nonprofit that has had some opportunities to expand into Marin and Napa counties.
Okay.
So currently we serve 3 districts in Sonoma County: Guerneville School District, Geyserville Unified, and Pioneer Olivet.
What was the middle one?
Guerneville, Geyserville?
Geyserville, okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
and then Pioneer Olivet School District.
Cool. And so you would have businesses, in this case, you would identify businesses generally in Novato close to the student's residence home, and then they would 40 hours a week times 2 weeks, 80 hours total on site?
Ish. Yeah, we have to be careful with the hours. But yes, so the first part of the program has already been a survey that Krissa and Kesta administered to all the incoming 12th graders. And so we have a good idea of what students are interested in. And then we do have some staples in our program that we always work with. For example, we always work with the fire department. We always work with the library. We always work with typically city government. And so we kind of use those as cornerstones. And then, for example, one area of interest that was really popular to the students at Marin Oaks was cosmetology. So then now it's on us to go find someone who does lashes, someone who does nails, things like that.
I'd love to have a further conversation, but this sounds like great. And the issue of how do you support the businesses that are supporting us, clearly you've had to do before and are an expert at, and that's what I'm interested in finding out about. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, I got a chance to look at your video, so your website, and nice. I was very impressed, and I wish we would have shown that this evening. But according to the background information that Mr. Saisi provided, how do we know if this will be successful? What are your metrics? Do you go back and compare the survey to what you guys have already asked, or how do you know if this will be successful, or what have you seen based on your experience?
I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of stuff in education, sometimes we just throw stuff and we're like, oh, it seems like it'll work. And so that's our goal, is to not do that. So we do a couple of things. We do pre and post competency surveying. So I was really excited when I heard you guys were doing the competency-based grading, because I was like, awesome, they're already gonna know. So we have students actually identify their own competencies, what they wanna work on, and then we have them self-reflect at the end. Did I work on this skill? So I'm thinking about, like, in our Geyserville program, a lot of kids said communication, and we were like, but what does that mean, right? So oral, written communication, and then they have to go and self-reflect at the end. Did I improve on that skill? Our bigger metric that we're looking at, and specifically next year, so 23-24 school year, is attendance. So what we've found is that our program is tied to attendance. So to do the off-campus experience, you have to attend the boot camp, and you have to be on time, and you have to attend, of the 10 internship days, the 2 weeks, you have to attend at least 8 of them to qualify for a small stipend from Magnolia Project and a letter of recommendation from your employer. And so we're really interested in seeing how our program can affect attendance. This is not scientific, but anecdotally, at our Guerneville site, where they have about 30% chronic absenteeism, we found that kids attended more during our boot camp and during the internship, externship days than they were like the typical school days. So that's been really hopeful for us. We're partnering next year with American Student Assistance. They're they do a lot of career tech ed stuff, and so they're gonna help us, because I'm not a data scientist, but they're gonna help us kind of figure out how do we collect that data and like figure it and things like that.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you for all that comments and questions.
High school focused, right?
Yeah.
High school focused.
Marin Oaks. Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Okay. This is an action item, if anybody would like.
I move approval.
Okay, and a second by Trustee Lamena. So
Gotta
first
be
by
successful.
And I want to say, I'm glad that she came, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
I am extremely glad she came, because she answered those questions a lot better
great.
than I would have. Yes.
Yeah. So we have a first by Trustee Miller, it gets a second by Trustee Lameta. All those in favor? 7-0. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gia.
Our last item of the evening is.
If you'll stick around, I would love to give 5 minutes with your time, if it's possible. Okay, we got one item left. And
approval of our annual school resource services report and recommendations for 23-24. Turn it over to Mike again. And you also have a document related to this item at your board table. It's the Novato Police Department report with the data.
I'm going to invite Lieutenant Jacob to come up as
Yeah.
well. So back in June of 2021, the board recommended bringing a broad-based committee together to develop protocols for staff and SRO involvement in school-based incidents, and that this committee would start meeting in September of 2021. That goal was met last year through the SRO committee under the guidance of Dr. Derby. This year, the SRO committee met 4 times. And the committee members are up on your screen. So we had representatives from Novato Police Department, North Marin Community Services, Bay Area Community Resources, Novato Spirit, Novato Community Equity Committee, and then several members from NUSD that you see listed there. This year was a little bit different. We met 4 times, and the meetings were essentially NUSD or NPD coming to those meetings and reporting out on what they had been experiencing. So what the SRO had been experiencing, what calls they were getting. So they were reporting out at every meeting. And then we also had requests on what interventions NUSD was doing throughout the district. So we did have one meeting where our newly hired substance abuse specialist, Sarah Jack, came to the meeting and reported out on what her position was and what trends she was seeing. She had only been on the job for roughly about a month or a month and a half, and she already was extremely busy. So she was reporting out on that. And then there was another meeting where we went over all the district interventions that we've been put in place this year. So Play Marin, CrossFit, the Michael Pritchard group, the Monet Project, which is a parenting group, and then the Turn Project, which was done at the high schools. And then our last meeting, it was great, and actually you're going to meet him tonight, was the introduction of our new SRO, Jonathan Timo, who's going to join Laura Hauser next year. So we're going to have two SROs. The recommendation, the superintendent and staff believe that the work of the SRO committee has fulfilled the board direction to establish guidelines for the SROs on campuses as agreed to in the MOU. Currently, we are working on a new MOU that will be ready in August of this year. The staff will implement those guidelines, and the Director of Student Services, myself, and the Novato Police Department, Lieutenant Chris Jacob, will continue to meet 3 times over the next year, so at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, to ensure compliance with that MOU. That is it for my presentation, and then I was going to call up Lieutenant Jacob to give the SRO presentation. Yep, I will. Okay, it'll look like that, but it's, all right. And then you just push this button when you're ready for that.
I think I can manage this one. Thank you, sir. Good evening, board members. My name's Chris Jacob. I'm the Special Services Lieutenant over at the Novato Police Department. I figured the best way to start this off with the most exciting news we've had in a little bit is, in fact, introducing our newest SRO, Jonathan Antimo. And before, well, you can come on up, Jonathan. He's not a shy guy, and that's what we liked right away. Just a little bit about him. I can't say enough or say anything better than he can say about himself, but he's bilingual. He's already a member of our crisis negotiation team. That means he's very, very good at talking to people in very difficult predicaments. He's also he's on our crime scene investigation team. That team requires a lot of attention to detail, a lot of specialized training. Many of the work that team does is very crucial in courts and very heavily scrutinized at later times. He's raised in Marin County, so he's a local guy. He knows our communities. It works out well in how he interacts in his day-to-day job, running into people in most oftentimes very difficult circumstances and perhaps the worst days of their lives. And there's a couple other neat things that he has to say, but I'll let him quickly introduce himself to y'all. Jonathan Antimo.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Jonathan Antimo. I've been a police officer for the past 2 years. Prior to that, I worked for the Boys and Girls Club of Sonoma Valley for 7 years. While doing that, I had a second job with the Sonoma Valley School District. So I was a behavioral aide with them, working with kids with extreme behaviors, and just kind of hanging out with them, building those relationships. Like you said, I'm born and raised Marin County, was raised in the Canal, San Rafael, went to Glenwood Elementary, Davidson Middle School, San Rafael High. Did spend my junior year at a continuation school, so I understand what it's like to get in a little bit of trouble and, work your way out of it. So I feel like that's going to be, a strong building block for myself and the kids. I went to Upstate State University, got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And that's kind of my thing. And I mean, I heard you guys talking about earlier, I did grow up in a English as a second language household. So like I said, I feel I could I can relate to these kids a lot. Yeah. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them about me, but.
I would say welcome. And I think I saw you as I was leaving the Sam Rin High graduation.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
It was great.
So I've been doing a little bit of, trying to get out there, meet and greets and the graduations and taking some of the calls that involve the schools.
Well, welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jonathan's going to officially begin his journey as an SRO in mid-July, but myself and my peer lieutenants, and the command staff also have been trying to get him some seat time with Laura. Laura's been handling the entire service load for the district, and I'll go over that a little bit in a moment, but we're trying to get him as much seat time as he can. He's still currently assigned to patrol, but the more time that he gets to build relationships with the site staff and the schools, the students can see him. We feel that'll get the ball rolling a little quicker when he actually does hit the seat in mid-August. All right. Most of you probably know a little bit about Laura Hauser, but for the entire year she was fielding the calls. I'll go into that in a minute, but yeah, Laura's one of our most veteran cops we have right now, and she puts that to use, and she's involved in a lot of different things. I won't read all these, but she's been a detective, patrol officer, brings a lot of experience, and not only in the technical law type aspects, but knowing how to navigate really sensitive situations with the campus, with the issues that the principals deal with. How do we get the child to succeed? Most of the things that just sitting here today, I heard speak of was how do we get the children to succeed? That's where we want to help out. That's the sole mission, working with the school districts. Can we get the child in class? If it's a school thing, no, we won't really get involved in that. And the MOU stipulates to that. But there are other ways and other forms that, don't even involve enforcement. So I think Laura's done a tremendous job this year fielding it. I did supervise our SRO program in years past as a sergeant, so I was a direct the SROs were my direct subordinates, and a lot of things are similar, but some are different, and Laura's handled it quite well, so we're proud of her. She's going to be on board next year helping mentor Jonathan, and we're really looking forward with working in the school district to provide good service to the school district.
Can I add something about her? I might have mentioned in a prior meeting, but I just wanted to say that I have attended 2 parent meetings, or actually 3. She's been great coming to PTA meetings. I was at Sinaloa for one, actually 2, and then also San Ramon. And the information that she provided to the parents it was just enlightening and extremely helpful. And she does it in a really well-rounded way, making it understandable. So just kudos to her for coming and helping us understand the stuff out there on the internet and how to navigate around hidden icons on a kid's phone and all of that stuff that I had no idea about. So.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. One of the biggest challenges, in fact, that the families and the schools are dealing with. So this is just a quick snapshot of some of the larger, more pervasive distractions or problems that the schools dealt with. Vaping, fighting, some bullying, in person and with the cell phone, right? And possession of child sexual assault material. That's been a problem for a few years, and it's a tough one to grapple with. But like you said, ma'am, we're looking at ways to educate parents, and I'll go into that in the next slide, that we'll try to intervene a little bit with that. Social media use and cell phones, that encompasses everything. The bad stuff on the phone, the bullying that goes on, that stuff that they get in the phone that distracts them from their studies or from their class work. And then some gang activity. I think most of you are aware of that Linwood, but it didn't directly involve a campus. It was after school. We didn't see any events to that magnitude during class time. But so that was something that was there. So I mentioned Jonathan's our second SRO. He tested for the position in April and was selected at the end of April. What we tried to do was include members from the school, the high school. We had an actual Novato high school student on the panel to get their input, and we had a member of our police advisory review board, which I report out to, similar to this. And a member of that board was on our assessment panel for the position. So as a result, we have Jonathan joining us. So here's some of the presentations that Laura did. This is not all of them. There was about 22 or so presentations. They varied in length and depth and content. However, some of them involved, responsible social media and internet use for parents. It's come to our attention that the parents are struggling to monitor and grapple with their child's cell phone use. I do as a parent myself. I have a son that's high school age, and my wife and I grapple in that. She works for a school district in Petaluma, and I'm a police officer. So I figured if we're grappling with this, boy, our people, a lot of families are going to be grappling with this. So that's one of the things that she presented on last school year. We did traffic safety and DUI awareness, mostly high school kids for the DUI and traffic safety stuff. Vaping and tobacco prevention, that's a huge one that's kind of ongoing, that we don't criminalize that, but rather we try to prevent it and just educate kids and parents on the dangers of addiction and health consequences, stuff like that. We did go to some career fairs. We have our social host ordinance education, which will actually hold parents responsible that allow their, whether it's theirs or not, actually, minor children to consume alcohol in their homes. We have a city ordinance that prohibits that activity. So it's an infraction, but it does involve a fine, and it's not too small. Response to campus intruders, or so-called active shooter stuff. Intruders, helping educate, react or respond techniques for that stuff. Drug identification for the school staff members. These drugs are constantly evolving. They have new names. They're coming up with new stuff off the street, trank, and some of them, I didn't even know, and I've been doing this for 20-something years. And so, yeah, it's an ongoing education for us, and we try to pass that on to our school partners. We did some elementary school visits, but with those, it's what do we do? and we just talk to them, and it's very basic, and those were one of my most fun ones to do. I used to love going to those. So yeah, pretty low level on that, but role of the school resource officer to staff and students. So is a after the MOU, what is our role? We got to clarify that. There were some changes, and we tried to say, hey, this is what we are here for, and this is what we're not. So some of that stuff. That's not all of them. That's just a major. There were a few others, but that's a snapshot of it there. So Laura was very, very busy. We're working on some other assessments, some safety assessments from the schools. They're very in-depth. It's an ongoing thing for us. Jonathan's going to get one soon. Okay, so moving forward, I realize these are very broad, but we still have our, like Mike mentioned, we're going to have the new MOU, and I think a lot of the core things are still going to be there, and we're going to look for added opportunities to build trust through our partnership with you guys. Oops, what did I just do? With the school district, because in essence, we're there for the same goal, to help the children succeed. So we're open to different ideas and creative stuff where we can, follow the MOU, but help these kids get into class and succeed. And we want to continue education and prevention efforts through the Vigilant Parent Project initiative. Also, continue our vaping, tobacco preventative, presentations and other classroom activities where appropriate. Like the MOU stipulates, if the school approaches us, we talk about it. We don't willy-nilly go in there and, hey, kids, we're working with our school district and our site staff to vet and see where we can be helpful to them. Just one quick thing, Vigilant Parent Project Initiative, that speaks to what you were talking about, ma'am. This is for mostly the parents on how, you mentioned an app. Yeah, the kids, like the drugs, these apps, they pop up, they disappear. These companies find new ways to create these apps to hide stuff from parents. So Laura went to a training for this Vigilant Parent Project, which is educating parents on what these cell phones do. It's a spectrum. A lot of parents are very savvy, but I'd fancy to guess that many don't. And there's new apps that we don't know about. Certainly, I don't know them all. But this is great. The parents have been craving this. How? They ask us. We get these calls all the time. Hey, Officer Jacob, so-and-so, what do I do with my kid's phone? It's like, well, do you know how it works? That's the first step, right? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, okay. See, so the kids know this technology. The parents a lot of times don't. So this, I think, will strengthen the parents or enhance their toolbox to be able to deal and monitor their kids' activities, and how to deal with it if they've got a problem, if they've got something that they need to take action on. But it's a very good course, and we learned about it through a sheriff's office school resource officer that was at the countywide law enforcement school partnership meeting, and I was like, wow, this is great. I think the school agreed that this is something that could really have an impact for parents and then the students downstream. Let's see if that's it. I'm out of time. All right. I'm sorry. I guess it's question time.
Yeah, you're fine.
Anybody
You're
got
fine.
questions?
Questions, Trustee Lemetta.
Oh boy, I see
And Trustee
hands.
Miller.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you for bringing up the social host ordinance. I actually worked on it between 2006 to 2007, helped passed it with the County of Marin through the Youth Leadership Institute, so I'm glad that it's still making an impact years later. I wanted to thank you for your little graph on how many, like the demographics of the citations issue and how many people were booked based on the demographic. But moving forward, what I would like to see, I saw that the activity was 426. What I would like to see moving forward, and I don't know how to do this, is how many of those were Black and brown students and the reasons of the cause. Because I would like to review the data in a couple of months. So I don't know what we can do in order to implement that. Thank you.
Just before he answers that question, the paper that you have in front of you, the colored, that one with the colored graphs, that's from last year. So that's 21-22.
21-22.
The other one that you have with the gray circles on them, that's this year's data. Yes, to date.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that is not on there that I think is important to note is of the, I think it was 426 calls that the SRO received.
Yeah.
You said about 1% of those. Less than 1% are ones that she actually like goes to the site and deals with. Correct.
Clarify calls. Sorry. Just to clarify, and this was a well talked about item on our agendas. Calls is just any time they are contacted. It does not mean that there's any contact or interaction with students at all, and they're not even necessarily about a student. So what we would want, if I'm not mistaken, is the citations, the interactions, and like, for example, the arrests and the citations, which is what's on here. You just want that data broken down. So as opposed to last year where there were 10 arrests, this year there has been 1, and you'd like to know what the racial breakdown is for that. And last year there were 41 citations, as opposed to this year there's been 8.
But I guess my question is, I would like to know why we contacted them. Whether it was no student interaction, I just kind of want to look at the data, why 426.
Perfect.
So yeah.
And that's something we'll have to work on how we can collect that data. Last year we had 1,041 calls, and this year we're down to 426. And a lot of that has been working with the administrators and our discipline matrix that we just put in place this year on this is when you call the school resource officer, and these other infractions, you don't need to call the school resource officer. So it's definitely, it's a work in progress, but you can see it's been improved this year.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of want to see, like, where else can we improve, right? Where else can we provide resources to our teachers, our campuses? So that's kind of, even though I know this is great information, but how can we continue to improve? Thank you.
Anybody else? Trustee Gasson, then, oh, Trustee Miller? Okay. Sure. Okay, Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Gasson.
First, don't apologize for being enthusiastic about trying to help the 7,000 citizens that are on our campus. It's an honor for us to serve them. It should be an honor for you to serve them as well. Thank you very much. And you, including your wife and your kids at home who are wondering what you're doing, you know. I'm very interested in how this breaks. First of all, I'm glad to see the numbers are going down. I assume that they're going down not because we're not calling, but because we understand the difference between a discipline issue in a classroom and a police matter. With Dr. Derby, we've spent time making sure we had North Bay security services, so who don't have police authority. They don't carry a badge, they can't do arrests. There's this range of responses then from the classroom teacher being frustrated and trying to deal with an issue to the vice principal in charge of discipline trying to deal with the issue, to bringing on either a second administrator, North Bay security services, to bringing on a law enforcement officer who carries a badge and has the authority and duties that a law enforcement officer brings, to something more severe than that. And that we have that range, which we've talked about before at this table, I guess it's I don't know who even answers this question. That model seems like it's working. What I'm seeing is less law enforcement, and the times, and I've had the privilege to sit with Dr. Hauser in Dr. Derby's office, or Officer Hauser, and watch her professional skill set at work. So with my respect to everybody on the team, how does that team work together? Are we doing the right thing? Do you have some ideas of how we could do better? With the intention of being able to get better measurements, but it seems like that strategy we adopted a couple of years ago is in fact working. That's what it sounds like. So maybe I guess it's I'm trying to figure out how to ask a question here without telling you what the answer is.
I would just say that this is an ongoing process. This is not something that we can solve in year one. I feel like this is year one after the SRO committee really worked on all the protocols around it. So I'm hoping next year we're going to get even better and working with Dr. Smith and Lieutenant Jacob as well, as far as how we can get even better as we're moving forward.
Thank you. I mean, that's sort of an open-ended question.
Trustee Gasson? No? Trustee Pickus?
Thank you for the presentation. This is really interesting. And there's a lot of education, I think, that needs to happen. So I appreciate that that's a part of the work you're doing. I have sort of two questions. We're seeing it looks like a significant decrease in sort of an outreach to Novato PD for discipline issues. So that's really exciting to see. I'm wondering, we're bringing in a second SRO, so I'm wondering if you could speak to the need for a second SRO when we're seeing the issues decrease. Can you maybe talk about that dynamic a little bit?
Sure. Laura was struggling to keep up with some of the demand. And even with the first part of your question, Mike said it, is that matrix that the schools go by. Mm-hmm. This is the problem you have, and here's what you do about it. You just look up the problem, and then it tells you, based on the severity of the offense, whether or not it's a crime, if it's a penal code violation, that determines when you call. There's no proactive enforcement. We come in when we're called, and that notwithstanding that, the officer is going to do a second vetting process. If it has anything to do with education code or school discipline, we politely give advice. But I got to say, the school district did a good job of the first vetting of it. I can't say this. I mean, when you say, are we measuring a decrease in crime? Or are we measuring a decrease in calls? Mm-hmm. We would need more longitudinal data to figure that one out. Yeah. Like Mike mentioned, this is year one. But from what he mentioned, significant drops in enforcement actions and contacts.
So part of your question, I think, was why a second SRO? And I just speaking from my experience and talking to, now I've forgotten her, Laura. I was going to use her last name. One of the things that I admired about her was she was really trying to make connections with families and kids and parents. And that's a lot of, we've got over 7,000 kids. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to be at the sites when they needed them for, the elementary schools or whatever. And I think from my perspective, a second person would be so beneficial, and the fact that they're bilingual is another added element. So I just saw that she was at several meetings in a row. She's got her own family and stuff too, so I felt like she was probably spending a lot more time, on the focus of our schools and our kids. But a second person would probably be of huge help.
The second one would, Jonathan, I'd see that as being able to enhance the presentation ability, the helping the schools do safety assessments, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That's where we need that's where we're putting more of our effort. Before they were more involved in the school community, they were more part of the campus. The kids knew them better, but in this new role, we can do these presentations. Mm-hmm. She couldn't do as many as this school would like. We just couldn't do it. We had to, not enough time for her to be able to, but this will absolutely enhance some of the presentations and prevention aspect of the job.
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the second comment that I would make is I'd be really interested in, and maybe this is a district question, but in student and community member feedback on the shifting role. You know, I think we sort of 2 years ago made this shift in our relationship with Novato PD in an effort to have students, you know, in an effort to do a lot of things, really. And I think one way to evaluate our success is to look at how students feel about the new SRO role and how family members feel. And so I would be really interested in us gathering that data as well, so that we can make sure that it's not just numbers that we're seeing, but that we're also being really effective in terms of building positive relationships for positive outcomes. So if we could add that up to our list of questions. I know that 2 years ago, there was sort of an initial study done before we put the committee together, and maybe replicating some of those questions, or I don't know what those exact questions were, if they're replicable, but you know, just to kind of gather that feedback, I think would be really helpful. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea. The other point I was just going to remind the group is Laura only works Tuesday through Thursday, or Tuesday through Friday. So to have an overlap and ensure that there's an SRO always available during school hours is just really important. If and when we do need guidance, especially since we've shifted so much to prevention, I know that as a district leadership team, we feel better with the consult from someone who is trained to work with students and has relationships with our families than just calling dispatch. So having the overlap, I think, is going to be beneficial for us.
No crises on Mondays, not allowed. Right.
I'm going to ask Leslie about the question that Trustee Pickus had about Youth Truth. Will that address any of the, what parents think, or us? Do you know what I'm?
Well, there are some safety-related questions in there.
Okay.
But I was just mentioning to incoming Superintendent Smith that I believe it was Michelle Cortez who developed the survey a couple years ago,
okay.
and thinking that if we could get that and do that again, then we'd have something to compare.
Okay, thank you.
Can we, I know that a year ago, I felt that we saw these surveys regarding Black and brown students feeling over-policed on campus. I don't know if we can also look at that data again, or where can I find that data again, where they didn't feel safe at school.
It might be that same survey. I don't know.
Okay.
All right, anybody else?
Just a clarifying question. So it looks like we'll be coming back next year and we'll be looking at the MOU and see if there's any changes that we want to make to continue this work. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we will have data, correct?
I plan
For
to.
the 426, because I'm looking at the MOU, or the supporting document from December 1st, 2021, and I'm trying to understand, Dr. Larson, why would we call the police officer when there's no student interaction? Is that for services on training on the social media? Is that looking for the partnerships, or why would someone call when they don't need the assistance of an SRO?
A number of things. I can give you an example from last week. I had a parent reach out and ask me about something that had occurred on a weekend, and I don't have that information, so I need to call our SRO to find out what that incident was. So a lot of times it's me following up on a request from a community member. It could be me consulting with an SRO to determine whether or not it's a school-related or something that violates the penal code. And so there's so many reasons that we could reach out and work in partnership, and a lot of them could very possibly she'd have to say what's logged and what's not. Planning. We have, for example, during football season, we have a meeting after every single football game, and our police and North Bay Security are present because we have to plan security for all of those events. There's thousands of people. Those would be one or two calls a week during that whole season. So things like that.
Okay. Yeah, that data would be helpful. Thank you so much.
I would imagine too that for those calls that were actually incidents relating to a student, there's multiple follow-up calls. So basically it really kind of multiplies very quickly. So I don't know if we're ever going to get a really clean breakdown of all that. I think the best thing to understand is the number of incidents and so arrests, citations, et cetera. That's the real meat, the crux of things for us to get it right.
My earlier question was going to be if that number is specifically calls from our school campus or sites, because there would also be the times you're referring to, like the weekends or other incidents and things. So is this specifically these 426? I mean, I hate to, we don't have to go in, but it crossed my mind as we were discussing, and I decided not to ask the question, and now I will. But I think there's other people that might be calling too.
Correct.
So Matt, okay.
Yes, they're from the schools regarding some type of school matter. But a lot of, like Dr. Larson said, the teachers aren't the pros in the legal area, so they deal with a lot of very unique circumstances with different kids, and a lot of times they want to run it by, problem solve with another person that can let them know, hey, what are we dealing with here? Is this a crime? Because a lot of them, it is tough to figure out, do you have a violation of the law? Is it a campus safety issue? Am I overthinking it? Is this student in crisis? Do they need help? How can we help them? It's just all over the map. Laura provides that extra guidance to get it right, get the child in the right kind of reaction to it, or the correct response, rather. Yeah, so I don't know when I can't imagine they're on the weekends. No, it's mostly during the week, school hours, right, when school's in session. And one more note about the statistical stuff. We are going to, we're working on it right now. It just involves a way different data mining process. It involves some different systems of ours that we use. So it takes a crime analyst to help us with it. So we are working on it. I want to get it out before September 1st, earlier than last year. We had a lot more stuff that we captured in last year's report than the year prior, and we're looking to mimic that type of analysis. So I just don't, I mean, we just finished school. So I tried to give you a snapshot of the basic arrests. You know, you're talking 9 enforcement actions for 426 calls to Laura. So, yeah, regarding your question, ma'am, we're going to have a more robust analysis coming out soon. Yes, ma'am, of course.
Yep. Trustee Jacobson.
Is
and Trustee
that
Miller.
is that analysis best done by you, or is it something that we should have a call log for? Not that we need any more work, but just curious.
Is that to me?
Whoever
I'll
might
analyze
have
the
a good
data
idea.
I have. I can't speak to what we don't have.
Sorry, what was that?
We can analyze the data that we have at the police department, but I can't speak to other people's data.
I guess my question is, are you charting why they call you so that you're able to then disseminate a list for us of like questions about a certain event versus can you come make a presentation or a follow-up? Or is that something that is better for us to make as a chart?
We chart the calls, yes.
Okay.
I mean, Laura keeps pretty good data, and that's what I'm using now, today. So we can analyze that data set. And there are a lot, you know, why we were called, what the disposition is. Well, a lot of times what we get called for doesn't end up what it is at the end. So we should have both to look at. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Trustee Miller?
So it seems to me that what the police department have is a really robust, solid call tracking system. I envy that we would have the same for some of the systems we run, make sure that we give return calls to parents or other things. So I would like to lean on the system. I am concerned that two things. One is that you're the only evaluator of why the call was made. I would like some kind of collaborative process that occurred. I don't know what that looks like. What I don't want it to happen is that call log to ever be provided here so that the community could ask for and get information that belongs properly inside of a law enforcement protective environment. So maybe a dialogue with our superintendent on how what level of information gets shared, because clearly you've got, what did we say, 435, I mean, there's a precise number. Some of them got on the log, exactly that many, and then some didn't. I know if I called the chief of police and said, hey, you want to go have a cup of coffee, or can I help you with some community activity, or are you going to be around on July 4th, that call doesn't get logged. It doesn't go through the logging system. I know others do. So I just want to make sure we take best advantage of the tools we got and make sure more than one set of eyes goes on it, because the issue of how we work together to support those 7,000 citizens that are students in our school is, this evening we heard a collaborative effort to get that exact effort done. And that's what I would like to continue as a collaborative effort. But I think it's a staff function, not that some of that data doesn't belong in any kind of public venue because it's just too, it's not necessary, and it's not of value to bring it call by call out into any kind of public venue. So I'll leave it up to the superintendent. Pick one.
I think Mike is going to be, you're working
So
with.
Mike, I guess you're it. So there, thanks.
Chris, yeah, yes. So I'm going to leave it to them. I think we should let them, okay. If there's no further questions, this is approval of the annual school resource services report and recommendation for 23-24. And then just looking for the comments that were made, we're going to look for some more in-depth data. An MOU will be coming back, as it was stated, for the next year. This is also not just approval of that, but just also an understanding that staff will continue to implement those guidelines, and the Director of Student Services in Nevada Police Department, Lieutenant, will continue to meet quarterly, as Mike said, during the year to ensure compliance with the MOU. Additionally, the Director of Student Services will meet monthly with assistant principals to discuss SRO services and presentations. So I just want to be clear on what we're approving. All right? Trustee Gasson is a first. The second is by Trustee Mack. All those in favor? 7-0. Okay. That concludes our board meeting this evening. We're a little behind schedule, but I think that was a well-needed presentation. Okay, next board meeting is on the 27th of June, which is our last one of the school year. This meeting's adjourned.